What's up, pretty people? This is Bins, and thank you for tuning in to the Shapez BEASTMAM series. Starting a previous video, we moved our scope from the part of the factory in charge of producing flat pieces in favor of the one producing floating pieces. We talked about some characteristics of floating pieces, notably the challenges posed by Shapez Industries and its exclusive laser cutter unit. As always, the link to the entire BEASTMAM playlist is in the description, so if you want to look at the videos that preceded this one, click the link and start at video number 1. Today, I would like to give you an overview of the physical units of the floating piece factories. So, you know what they look like, how they've been put together, and how they make their contribution to the bigger thing. So, without further ado, let's dive right in. First, let's zoom out to orient you a bit. So this is the factory, and we have been talking about the parts of the factory that produce the flat pieces or the remainder pieces. And from now on, we are going to be talking about this part right here. These 5 floating piece factories, as you know, meanwhile, one factory for each of the clocks that are in the decoder, because we might get a total of 5 floating pieces. And then let's just start at the start. If you've seen the videos about the flat piece factories, well, then this will be very familiar to you because I used the exact same input technique. I'm not going to go over it again. So we have these 3 special pieces that get filtered here. They get rotated so we can cut out the top left corner, which is going to be the one that we actually need. And then we do get a small little difference, because what I decided to do in terms of ratios is turn these quadrants into full shapes first. That's going to be more efficient for the paint lines, because it means that we only need 1/8 of a full belt of paint. So in that sense, I decided to work with mixed input belts for this one. So we have a total of 8 pieces right here. I chucked in this random quadrant to make the total amount of items on this belt a power of 2, namely 8. And that's how I was able to use mixed input belts right here. Now, in this current example, we are dealing with gray shapes, so these are bypassed. And then, very similarly to what we saw before, we're going to cut this into 4 quadrants again after it's been painted. If it were painted, which the current example doesn't show, but if it were painted, it would come out here at a ratio of 1/4 of a belt's worth. And then cutting that into 4 corners gives us a full belt of quadrants. At the same time, we have this sneakily woven belt of scaffolding pieces. And as I told you in the last video, the scaffolding pieces are always going to occupy the top right corner. So in upcoming videos, we're going to look at how I manipulated the shape signal, the input signal, so that the scaffolding can always be in the top right. Because if I do that on the wiring, then I don't have to perform any weird tricks in order to calculate how the scaffolding might have to be rotated. No, I kept it simple that way. So the scaffolding is always going to be in the top right corner. And this enabled me to create, more compact stacking units right here. So we have a simple stacker unit. This is a serial stacker, so it's not balanced. A balanced unit would have been more efficient, faster. However, I did need 5 of these things, and the serial unbalanced stacker is, it takes up less space. So I decided to go for space efficiency rather than speed efficiency. I'm not very sure if that compensates for it. If I had built balanced stackers right here, it was my presumption actually that they would take up so much space that I wouldn't gain much speed in the end, because the shapes would have to be coming from further. I'm not very sure. I haven't made that test. But anyway, if the shapes are floating, then they will be produced by this factory, and they will always have scaffolding pieces, right? So in previous machines I made combo units that were able to cope with both flat and floating pieces, but I didn't necessarily need to make that effort here because we are always going to get floating pieces. So they simply get output right here, and then they move into another stacker unit that we have seen because it's very similar, I believe even identical to the one that is in the flat piece factory, so I'm not going to go over that either. We have two of those. They come together. We have another one so that the machine is capable of creating floating pieces of up to 4 layers. Okay. And then when that comes out here, this is where we have a unique model to the floating piece factories, which is the laser cutter array. As with the other cutters, you need to separate it over 4 cutters right here. And then, as I said before, I am always going to cut out the top right. This was a lot easier for me in terms of wiring up these laser cutters because all they need is a constant 1 input, and that is a lot simpler. Then we have this little thing that is in charge of making sure, or at least working towards, outputting exclusively full belts that will be beneficial further downstream, right? Because it will counteract clogging of the machines. It will provide the final shape more quickly. And that's already the end of the line. So these shapes, this is the actual floating piece that we need. It is uncolored because in this particular case, we will need to be layer painting it later, in which case I decided to, skip the coloring stage. And I think this is already it. So I have 5 identical copies of this, and these 5 copies get output to the assembly line together with the flat piece factories. And I do want to keep that for other episodes. So I think, as a matter of fact, we are already done with this episode. So hey, maybe a shorter one this time, but nonetheless, I want to thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again the next time. If you're curious to see what's coming up, as always, you know where the subscribe button is. I always greatly appreciate a like for this video, a comment, and then all I need to do is sign off for today, wishing you an excellent day. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.